The morning light crept through the blinds like a secret whisper, casting long, gentle fingers across my living room floor. I relished these quiet moments with a steaming mug of coffee. The world outside still in a sleepy haze. My sanctuary was a small, nondescript neighborhood, wrapped in the familiar hum of distant traffic and the occasional bark of a dog. It was a place where routine existed as a comforting rhythm, one that lulled me into a belief that peace was perpetual. But peace has a fragile nature, easily disrupted by the unassuming power of a single individual. Karen, the self-appointed overseer of our homeowners association, wielded her influence like a conductor's baton, orchestrating the neighborhood to her liking. Her presence was a constant, like the sun, albeit without the warmth. She had an affinity for rules, or rather, her interpretation of them that bordered on obsession. Her first foray into my life was subtle. A note slipped beneath my door like a passive-aggressive whisper, gently reminding me that my hedge was precisely 2 inches taller than the regulation allowed. It made me chuckle. The absurdity of it. I didn't cut it. I enjoyed watching nature take its course, unrestrained by the imaginary lines Karen drew. I replied with silence, a powerful ally, as my own silent protest took root. But Karen was persistent. Her next move came with the predictability of a tide. Packages left at my doorstep, a modest collection of books and curious trinkets, began to vanish, absorbed into the void of her scrutiny. It wasn't long until I caught her in the act. The slender figure of control marching away with a box tucked beneath her arm. She moved with the purpose of someone convinced they were doing the right thing, her steps echoing with self-righteousness. I watched from my window, the scene unfolding with a peculiar detachment. My patience was not a weakness. It was a quiet strength, honed over years of understanding that storms pass, and waves of discord eventually retreat, but even the calmest waters have limits. My thoughts were a tapestry of calculated resolve. I would not raise my voice. I would not confront her in the street. I preferred action, silent and precise, delivered with the finesse of a surgeon. A plan took shape, not out of spite, but out of necessity. A lesson wrapped in irony, waiting to be delivered as the ultimate surprise. I ordered the package, its contents a buzzing testament to the absurdity of Karen's crusade. It was a gift she wouldn't soon forget, a reminder that boundaries, like hedges, could grow in unexpected directions. As I sealed the box, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, not revenge, but a balance, restored. The days passed with the deceptive tranquility of a lake before the storm. And I waited, patient as ever. The wind carried with it the promise of change. And I knew that soon the scales of justice would tip in the most unexpected way. The sun rose with a gentle indifference, casting a warm amber glow over our little suburban kingdom, weaving through the trees and settling onto manicured lawns like a golden quilt. The tranquility of dawn, however, was merely a facade beneath its serene surface. A storm brewed a storm with the name Karen. After the incident with the package, Karen had doubled down on her role as the neighborhood watch, self-appointed guardian of peace and order. Her reign was one of terror wrapped in the guise of tidiness, with a smile as sharp as a knife's edge and rules enforced with the gusto of a drill sergeant in a war zone. The first indication came via a slip of paper tucked under my windshield wiper, its presence like a bitter whisper in the morning air. Violation. It read in stern, block letters, accusing my flowerpots of encroaching on common space. I chuckled at the absurdity as if petunias could be anarchists. But Karen was relentless, her petty citations accumulating like autumn leaves, rustling with a thread of fines and discontent. The grass, a millimeter too long, the garbage cans, an inch astray, each infraction documented with military precision. Each note a silent scream demanding compliance. In the neighborhood, whispers grew, curling around corners and seeping through hedges. Karen's influence spread like ink in water. Her eyes, ever watchful, seemed to multiply, taking root in the minds of others. The gossip was a slow poison, seeping into casual conversations, turning nods into wary glances. I became the subject of hushed discussions, the accused in an unspoken trial. The package incident morphed into a tale of rebellion, painted with Karen's lurid brushstrokes of righteousness, the tale twisted in the telling, truth tethered to imagination. My simple act of retaliation had become mythologized, the bee that dared to sting the queen. My evenings were spent in quiet defiance, sipping tea on the porch, watching Karen's shadow flit from house to house, her clipboard, a scepter of authority. I listened to the tick-tock of my wall clock, a steady reminder of time's impartial march. Karen's antics, in contrast, felt like a clock wound too tight, hands spinning out of control. Yet, beneath her iron grip, I sensed a fragility, a porcelain mask hiding a brittle network of insecurities. Her need for control, a shield against a world she couldn't predict. The neighborhood was her kingdom, yes, but it was also her mirror, reflecting back the chaos she feared. Despite the mounting tension, I found myself smiling at the absurdity of it all. Life, after all, was a series of unexpected twists, with characters like Karen adding spice to the mundane. This was but a chapter, a theater of the everyday, with dramatics played out on freshly mowed lawns and neatly trimmed hedges. In the quiet moments, I found solace in the hum of cicadas, their persistent chorus a reminder of nature's own relentless rhythm. It was a harmony beyond rules and gossip, a soundtrack to my resolve. Karen's crusade continued, but so did my silent rebellion. I tended my garden with care, planted seeds of patience, and let them sprout into quiet strength. The battle lines were drawn, yet I stood firm, a calm presence in the face of her chaos. The story unfolded with its own pace, a dance of wills beneath the suburban sun, and as each day passed, I bided my time, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal my next move, a move as unexpected and buzzing as the surprise I had sent her way. The neighborhood sat under a thick, oppressive silence, as if holding its breath. The air was still, charged with the static of anticipation. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting striped shadows across my living room floor. It felt like an unspoken promise of change. I had a plan, a subtle counter to Karen's audacity that would leave no mark but a lesson. Over the past few days, I documented everything. Her brazen act of taking my package without a hint of permission, her smug demeanor as she feigned ignorance, it all went into a neatly organized file. I watched her through the window as she swept the walkway in front of her house, each stroke of the broom a testament to her need for control. Her movements were precise, calculated, as if she could sweep away her own guilt with every fallen leaf. She had no idea what was coming. The package I prepared was innocuous, unassuming, the kind of thing one might forget entirely. Once received, tucked inside was a small device, innocuous in its simplicity, yet perfect for the task. A gentle reminder that some boundaries are not hers to cross. I paced my living room, rehearsing each step in my mind. The delivery would arrive when she was least expecting it, timed perfectly with her morning routine. I imagined her confusion, her surprise, slowly morphing into the realization of her own misstep. It was a subtle dance of irony. As the delivery truck rumbled into the cul-de-sac, I felt a surge of anticipation. The driver approached her door with a casual gait, the package balanced effortlessly in his hand. I watched from my window, heart beating in rhythm with each step he took. Karen's door swung open, and she greeted him with her usual veneer of politeness, masking the sharp edges beneath. The package changed hands, and I watched, the scene unfolding like a silent film. She glanced at it, her expression shifting from curiosity to mild suspicion. Yet, as expected, her pride would not allow her to admit any doubt. She dismissed the driver and retreated inside. The hours that followed were thick with suspense. I busied myself with mundane tasks, trying to shake the tension that coiled within me. Each tick of the clock was a reminder of the inevitability of consequences. Then, a sound broke the afternoon stillness, a faint, persistent buzzing, like a swarm of bees trapped beneath a glass. It was the sound of karma, subtle, yet undeniable. I imagined Karen's bewilderment as she searched for the source, the dawning comprehension that she had invited this upon herself. The irony was intoxicating. I felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing the lesson was delivered in a manner as unobtrusive as her initial transgression. The buzzing, relentless and insistent, mirrored the persistence with which she pursued her misguided sense of authority. I peered through the blinds once more. The street was calm, undisturbed by the private drama unfolding within Karen's walls. I understood then that justice need not be loud or forceful. Sometimes, it is the softest whispers that echo the longest. In the days that followed, there was a change, a subtle shift in Karen's demeanor. Her greetings were less pointed, her presence less looming. The package remained unclaimed, serving as a quiet testament to the power of boundaries, unseen yet firmly drawn. I returned to my routine, the incident a mere footnote in the narrative of our neighborhood life, a reminder that beneath the veneer of suburban tranquility, stories of quiet rebellion are always unfolding, waiting to be told. The heat of the afternoon sun bore down relentlessly on our little cul-de-sac, casting sharp shadows that seemed to stretch out like the claws of a predatory beast. I could feel the weight of them pressing on my shoulders as I gazed across the street at Karen's house. Her pristine lawn, with each blade of grass standing to attention like soldiers on parade, was a green island in a sea of suburban sameness. The buzzing package had done its work. The day after I'd left it on Karen's porch, the sound of her shriek had echoed through the neighborhood like a banshee's wail, spiraling up into the blue sky. It was followed by a symphony of curses, muffled yet sharp. Piercing through her closed door, I could almost taste her outrage, bitter and metallic, spreading through the air. Now, as I watched from the sanctuary of my window, the neighborhood began to stir. Curious eyes peered from behind curtains, subtle as shadows but no less scrutinizing. They had all heard the commotion. Of course, Karen's dramatics had a way of drawing attention like moths to a flame, and in the days following, whispers floated on the breeze, speculation weaving a tapestry of intrigue that knotted the community together in shared curiosity. The tension hung like a shroud over our once quiet street. Karen, usually so vocal and visible, had become a specter, haunting her own home. Her usual patrols, where she'd glide down the street, hawk-eyed and judging, had ceased. The absence of her presence was as loud as the barking dogs she so despised. I watched this new silence settle in, a quiet chaos that was somehow more unsettling than her usual intrusion. It was the calm before a storm, a pregnant pause in the symphony of life that hinted at a crescendo yet to come. Inside, a sense of satisfaction bloomed, a quiet vindication that warmed my spirit like a sip of good whiskey on a cold night. But there was more than just satisfaction. There was also the anticipation of consequence. Her silence was not one of defeat. I knew it was the gathering of a storm, and storms, by their nature, bring change. Hints of this change were already emerging. Neighbors began to gather in small groups, voices hushed yet animated, like actors rehearsing a play. Conversations danced around the subject of Karen, their tones a mix of amusement and apprehension. Was it too much? I wondered as I watched the street come alive with gossip and speculation. Had my buzzing package been too potent a sting? I wanted to believe that it was a lesson in humility, a gentle nudge towards self-awareness. But Karen was not one to accept nudges or lessons. She was a force, a hurricane in floral prints and sensible shoes, and I had merely been a breeze pushing against her. In the distance, the hum of a lawnmower started up, breaking the tension like a needle to a balloon. The world continued to spin, oblivious to the tiny war on our street, but I knew the battle lines were drawn, and Karen would not remain idle for long. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching further, like fingers reaching for something just out of grasp. The day waned, yet the air remained charged, as if the street itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next move in our silent game of power. In that moment, as the light began to fade, I understood the irony of it all. For all her righteousness, Karen had become the puppet of her own making, trapped in the strings of her pride and indignation, and I, the quiet narrator of this suburban drama, had unwittingly become the puppeteer. But this was far from over. The stage was set for the final act, and I knew the curtain would rise soon enough. The legal letter arrived on a Tuesday, slipped between glossy flyers and bills camouflaged by the mundane. I held it in my hands for a moment, feeling the quiet weight of its words before I opened it. The buzz of anticipation was not unlike the hum of the bees that had been my previous messengers, a subtle vibration promising more than mere annoyance. Inside, the paper was crisp, the ink formal and unyielding. I savored the moment before I began reading, knowing that each paragraph was a small step in reclaiming control. It was a simple thing, really a cease and desist order, penned with the precision of a scalpel, yet its power was immense, a whispered storm brewing just beneath the surface. Karen, with her HOA fortress, had underestimated the quiet strength of legality. Her petty tyrannies had been the buzzing of a single wasp compared to this swarm of consequence. I imagined her reaction, the flush of red creeping up her neck, the tight clench of her jaw. The thought was strangely satisfying. Like the first sip of a finely brewed tea, the letter outlined the invasion of privacy, the misappropriation of my property, and the unwarranted surveillance, a laundry list of transgressions dressed in the language of lawyers. It was a mirror held up to her self-righteousness, reflecting every imperfection she had tried to obscure. There was no need for raised voices or dramatic confrontations. The real power lay in the subtlety, in the undeniable logic that unfolded calmly across the page. It was a dance of words, an artful maneuver that required no more than a signature and a stamp. I pictured her standing by her window, binoculars in hand, the world suddenly sharper and more in focus, yet slipping out of her control. The irony was not lost on me. Her need to oversee every detail had been her undoing. She had woven her own trap, and now it was closing around her. The days passed quietly. The sun rose and set, casting golden light and long shadows. As the neighborhood continued its routine symphony, there was no visible change. But the air felt different, charged with the electricity of impending justice. One afternoon, as I walked past her house, I caught a glimpse of her through the window still. Small, somehow diminished. She was no longer the looming presence she had once been, just another player in the neighborhood tapestry. I almost felt a pang of sympathy. But it was quickly quelled by the memory of her transgressions. Then came the moment of irony, the singular line that changed everything. A simple, unassuming call from the HOA board, seeking to resolve the misunderstandings. A reluctant olive branch extended in the face of undeniable evidence. The tone was soft, conciliatory, a stark contrast to the haughty commands of the past. I listened, allowing the words to wash over me, every syllable a small victory. The fence was mended, the boundaries respected, the bees left to their own devices, balance restored in the most unexpected of ways. It ended as quietly as it began, leaving behind only the faint echo of past grievances. Karen remained, diminished, yet unchanged, a testament to her own stubbornness, and I remained, a quiet force of nature, unyielding and serene, the storm that had passed, leaving clarity in its wake. The morning air was crisp with the promise of change. As the first light spilled over our cul-de-sac, it cast long shadows that danced across the neatly manicured lawns and whispered through the leaves of the oak trees. The tranquility was deceptive, a calm veneer over the simmering tension that had gripped our small community ever since Karen's latest escapade. I stood by the window, sipping my coffee, watching the neighborhood stir to life. The buzz from the package, which had stirred more than just curiosity, had mercifully ceased. It was now a muted reminder of the chaos that had erupted, leaving ripples of discord in its wake. But this wasn't just about the package or the relentless buzzing that had enveloped Karen's pristine facade in poetic justice. No, this was about a reckoning, a shifting of tides. Karen, the self-appointed queen of our homeowners association, had always wielded her power with an iron fist, her reign marked by unsolicited opinions and arbitrary rules, her voice echoing through our lives like a persistent, unwelcome wind, the kind that rattles windows and refuses to be ignored. But now, that voice was faltering, drowned out by the collective murmur of a community on the brink of reclaiming its autonomy, and it was beautiful. The neighborhood began to awaken, children's laughter mingling with the rustling leaves, a symphony of normalcy that had been absent for far too long. It was a melody that had been stifled under the weight of Karen's insistent demands, her rules like invisible chains, binding us to her will. But today, the chains felt looser, the air lighter. I stepped outside, the ground cool beneath my feet, feeling the world shift ever so slightly. Neighbors emerged from their homes, tentative smiles exchanged, a silent acknowledgement of the shared experience that had brought us to this moment. The package incident had been a catalyst, a spark igniting a flame of resilience. Karen emerged, her expression a mask of forced composure, the remnants of our little rebellion still lingering in the folds of her demeanor. The buzzing had ceased, but its resonance persisted, an unspoken reminder of her fallibility. Her gaze swept over us, seeking the old fear, the deference she had once commanded with ease. But today, it met only quiet defiance, a strength born from unity. As the sun climbed higher, casting warmth across the street, I felt a sense of peace settle within me, a quiet victory. Karen's reign was not over. Not entirely. Old habits die hard, and power is reluctant to fade, but the seeds of change had been planted, and they would grow, nurtured by the collective will of a community no longer willing to bow to one woman's whims. In that moment, standing amidst the whispers of change, I realized something profound. Karen had not been defeated by noise or confrontation, but by the simple act of standing together. Our strength lay in our unity, in the silent agreement that enough was enough. Her power was waning, not with a bang, but with the subtle rustle of a community finding its voice. The day stretched on, life continuing its relentless march, each moment a testament to our resilience, the shadows of the past receding as we moved forward, toward a future free from the tyranny of one. Karen's figure retreated, her silhouette blending into the background. No longer the towering presence she once was, just another resident among many. Change had come, not with a shout, but with quiet determination, a whisper that grew into a chorus. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of dusk, I knew our story had turned a page. The community was restored, the balance realigned. Karen, now just a part of our tapestry, no longer its fraying edge. And so it was, the final unraveling, the end of an era, and the beginning of something new.